Welcome back to another episode of 22 at the Lips. Like I say every episode, it's the podcast from EMS providers to EMS providers, healthcare providers, the civilian / bystander, whoever you are, welcome to the podcast. However you got here, welcome. Thanks for being here, friend. Today is, I'm not fangirling. It's an episode that I'm really honored to host. I'm here with Ginger Locke. I found Medic Mindset when I first started in EMS as a baby EMT, and I still am, but I was very hungry for anything and everything I could get my hands on. I was listening to every podcast I could find and stumbled upon Medic Mindset, which I am a huge fan of. Anytime someone asks me like, hey, what's some podcasts that you listen to? I'm like, I got you. Medic Mindset. Let me tell you what it's about. So that's Ginger Locke. And then baby EMT Alexis would be beyond herself, because like starting out the podcast, it was just people that I knew, people I came across. And then I reached out to Ginger and she was like, yeah, I'll be on. And I literally looked at my phone. I'm like, oh, are you sure? So
You know why it was an easy yes? It was an easy yes, because there are not many women EMS podcasters. Like, there just aren't that many. So It was like an automatic yes.
Glad you said that, because that's going to be one of our topics today. And we're going to get into that. Very excited about it. First and foremost, Ginger, if you want to tell the people who you are, what you stand for, the floor is yours.
Well, what I stand for would take a long time, but I can say, what I do professionally. So I'm a EMS educator, official titles, Associate Professor of EMS Professions at Austin Community College. So the local community college, we're training paramedics, EMTs. I'm on the ALS side, so almost only paramedic students. I've been doing that for over 15 years. And then, so I'm also a paramedic myself, but no longer working in the field. And then I started the podcast in 2016. I created and host a podcast called Medic Mindset that you already referenced. But I'm many other things. I'm a mom. I'm a partner. I'm a daughter, sister.
So many titles.
A Lego collector.
Ooh, tell me about that.
It started during COVID, I think, as it did with a lot of people. It became like my healthy coping habit. All my unhealthy ones didn't sustain me because like COVID and being locked down and everything was such a marathon. The other coping habits that were probably maladaptive, they worked for the first week, and then it was like, okay, this is going to be a marathon. So I had to replace it with something a little more sustainable.
I tried to put together this Lego piece. I think it was something like the Greek Colosseum. I don't remember, but I remember looking at it. Oh, is it? I remember looking at it. I'm like, I like puzzles. I like things like this. Like, no big deal. I got to step 5, and I just remember looking at all the pieces, and I'm like, oh no, I have messed up tremendously. I gave it to somebody else, and then they finished it in a week, and they were sending me pictures of it, and they're like, look at this. And I'm like, congrats, you can keep it forever. I'm getting mad at these little corner pieces, and then these other pieces that I'm holding up next to the paper, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. What have I done?
So you don't have any Lego in your house?
I don't think so, but if I did, I probably got rid of it.
Stepped on it and threw it away.
Get a little bit of flashbacks, and I'm like, no, you have to go.
And then as far as what I stand for, that was kind of part 2 of your question. What I've done with the podcast, at least kind of my overall mission, and what I'm doing at work at the college too, is kind of one of my main, when I'm trying to center myself around what I'm doing, why I'm getting up in the morning. I'm really ideally always trying to influence and push buttons and move needles on the ability for paramedics to have longevity in their career. That's a kind of a central focus for me. So they can be successful in those first year 1 and 2. That's kind of the typical EMS professor kind of goal, right? That they go out and have success in the field. But then beyond that, I'd like to be kind of leading and influencing where I can to try to create a work environment and career ladder and all these things that can lead to like lasting job satisfaction. So it's not just like a stepping stone to another part of the medical field.
Right. And going into paramedic school, I actually had one of our instructors tell us that like all the studying is like supposed to last you long term, because the lifespan of somebody, I think in EMS in general, is like 7 years.
Yeah, it's probably being generous.
And I don't know, like, granted, I don't think I'm going to be in this field for forever and ever. I want to stay in just a little bit longer, but it's a stepping stone for me. But also, like,
Yeah.
it's what you're doing is something that's going to impact people. And I think longevity is important because you always gain this wisdom and insight from these experienced medics who have been in this since years and years. So if that happens, and if we start losing that lifespan of providers and medics, then we lose that, hey, this is an easier way to do this, or hey,
Right.
calculate your med math like this. And yeah,
all that institutional kind of knowledge just vanishes when someone leaves. And you're absolutely right. Like, we have a mentoring problem in EMS because of that, right? If there's no one there that's been here very long, and I think when I think about the career ladder, it doesn't have to be in the field, although it can. Like, I would love for it to be sustainable, to be able to do field work forever. It would be nice if there were leadership roles, or becoming an educator, or moving into community health, or something that has more of a daytime hours, right? As people age, it would just be nice. But, nursing has all of this. They have all these routes they can go and kind of get into as they kind of get into their older years, they have all these options, right? To go work at like a slow clinic or something.
absolutely. I absolutely respect what you do, and I respect that mindset in it. No pun intended for your podcast.
I always try to avoid that word.
I'm sorry.
No, I'd try to, because I'm afraid it sounds like I'm forcing it, but it actually is the word I want to use sometimes. I will say every word but that. Mental model, or frame, or perspective.
Structure. All right, Ginger.
I'm here.
I sent you a bunch of discussion points, topic ideas, things like that. What I did not send you are the rapid fire questions.
Oh, no. Okay. I told you I'm a slow processor. I need a second, but we'll go for it. We'll see what happens.
Question number 1. What is your favorite animal and why?
It's definitely something in the ocean, because I'm a scuba diver. I would say I get the most excited to see a sea turtle because they're very much like us. They go up to the surface for air. And so when you're scuba diving, you can see them. Most fish are just kind of on their little altitude doing their thing, but the sea turtles are going up and down. And then they're just like old, and they look like grumpy old bald men, and they're just adorable. And they live a long time.
That's fair. I'm not gonna lie, you said sea turtle. I'm thinking of like those like brown spots on their head.
Yeah.
And then I did automatically think of like, this is gross, but like liver spots on our elderly people. So
They're little old bald men, and their big noses.
all right, question number 2. You're given the choice to go eat anywhere in the world, restaurant, country, price is no option. Where are you headed to?
Man, probably crepes in Paris at a little cart. And I would be there with my girlfriend, Cassie, because I've done it without her and I want to do that with her. Best crepes ever.
With like those little baskets of flowers.
Mm-hmm.
What's the is it a beret that
Yeah. The little artist
yeah.
French.
Yes. A mime in the background. No, just
Yeah.
kidding.
It's a good visual.
Last question. What is something or some things that you carry with you at all times ever
Mm.
is forever on your person?
Oh, you mean in civilian life, not EMS? I thought we were going EMS, but
Or both?
well, we could tell a funny story about in EMS. So the program that I went to is the one I teach at, and they're very for cardiology. They get really into the nitty gritty of like it's really more of an electrophysiology class than a cardiology class. Really deep into EKG systematic analysis, and so my first year of working on the truck, I totally carried calipers around with me, thinking that I would need those. Obviously, I never used them, but I was like, I think I need these. They were just in my little pouch. Okay, so civilian life, not a lot. So I have my keys on a carabiner because I have work keys. I'm always switching them around. Like I have two sets of keys, so I'm always switching them around. Obviously, my phone, always a Parker Jouter in my back pocket. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Not too
And
much.
my phone has all my cards in it and everything.
Okay. I got
Yeah,
you.
no wallet, no purse.
Who carries purses anymore? Let's just be honest.
I don't know.
I say that I recently acquired a fanny pack and it has changed my life. I wish I was joking.
No, it's great. We need to bring them back. I have many and I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for the world to tell me it's okay to leave the house with them.
Like I've seen a couple of people with them and I'm like, man, that's so outdated. And then I was like, I'm gonna get one just to try it out. And now like I wear it everywhere.
Mhm.
I recently dressed up soon and I had to tell myself like, you're wearing a nice dress, Alexis. You cannot wear a fanny pack. But I was also like, what if I did?
I think you could. The people that wear the packs, they're just rocking it. And then when I look in the mirror, I'm like, I'm not rocking this, so I can't do it. But the ones I've seen out in the wild, they're rocking it.
I mean, you can. If you say you can, it's not with that attitude.
Mhm.
Tell me about your experience in EMS. How long have you done this? Why did you get in the field? What all have you accomplished? Your certs, everything behind your last name. What you got?
Well, as far as how I got into EMS, I think I always tell this story differently because I can't, I think we have experiences and we make decisions in our past. And then later we will tell ourselves a narrative or a story about how we made that decision. And it may not actually be what really happened. It's been enough time now. So I have a degree in sociology, bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia. And I moved to Austin, Texas with planning to go to grad school. And I did. I started grad school for sociology and I had taken a year off between undergrad and graduate school to like get Texas residency and just kind of settle into Austin. And I worked for FedEx for that year. And I think it ruined me, but like in the most wonderful way. I loved being out doing. And so when I had to go back into the classroom and sit around a bunch of thinkers, while I do enjoy that, I missed that whole piece of like being outside, TikTok, the racing the clock, having to make decisions, using my body. And so in Austin at the time, they had these huge ambulances. They don't use them anymore, but they were like enormous. And I'd always kind of been interested in the medical field. And so the community college at the time would send in the mail these big catalogs of like stuff you could do. And I was like, I think I'm going to take an EMT class. Like I actually have always wanted to do this, but I was on this like academic track and had kind of like had a PhD for a mom and or a mom who was a PhD and just always thought I was doing this thing. And I think moving away 1,000 miles away from home kind of allowed me to think, what would I really enjoy? So I took a class, and yeah, that was it. I quit grad school to go to the community college.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I've heard many reasons why people join EMS, and every story is so unique and different. Nobody has said a FedEx driver.
They're similar.
Next time I see a FedEx driver, even if they're driving, I'm gonna roll down my window and just yell at them like, "Hey, do you want to be an EMS?" Diving into our topic today, I want to start off and I want to say this is not a thing to shame men or women or generalize a gender stereotype. That's not what I'm aiming at. I just kind of want to give like honest opinions and thoughts and slash or generate discussion from our viewers and listeners and stuff like that. Just because I feel like these are some realistic things for and what we're going to talk about, like women in this field. And we're going to bring up this is a male predominant field, and it's becoming more widespread, I guess, for ladies in EMS. But I kind of just want to, like I said, like just overall honesty and things that I've noticed, and like I'm going to talk, Ginger's going to bring up things that she's noticed and different viewpoints, more or less. And in general, my first point of this mind, sorry, Ginger, this mindset, in, in this topic, I feel like a reason why women shy away from getting in the EMS field, or I mean, even in some aspects, the healthcare industry is like that idea of like you have to be rough and tough. But in a sense, that is valid, because in general, if you don't have a backbone in this job, if whatever you are and whether you identify as, you're not going to last, because you have patients who are not always super nice and gentle. They can be little toots. You have your, I don't know how to say this nicely. You have your ER staff who they're going to question your treatment choice, and I've had some doctors be brutally honest. And you have your protocols and management who, if will verify your treatment options and kind of guide you along the way of how your agency does things, just being very vague and nice. So with this preliminary of what we're going to go for, Ginger, what would you say are some of the hardships of being a woman in EMS?
So I appreciated you sending me the questions in advance, because I think I would have had kind of a knee-jerk answer, and my knee-jerk would have been to only speak from my own experience and my own perspective. But I am just one woman's experience, and I think, and this may, I don't want to derail the conversation, but I also want to add this in, and maybe as a discussion point, that I've sat in on like EMS or women in EMS panels, or been asked that question a lot about, what is it like to be a female or a woman in EMS? And because I've talked to a lot of women in EMS, I have realized that my experience is very singular, and that my gender is one part of that, but my experience is also affected by the fact that I'm cisgender, or that I'm white, light skinned, or that I'm short, or that I'm it's multifactorial. That just saying, what is the woman's experience, that is impossible, because my experience and experience of like a woman of color, or a trans woman, or a young woman versus an older woman. These are all very different experiences, very different. So I think it is difficult to say, what are the challenges of women? Because I would only be speaking from the challenges of a short white woman as opposed to, a woman of color, totally different set of challenges. So I could speak from my perspective. I would say that actually being short, it had more, because I'm 5'4", had more of perhaps more of a, or at least I was more aware of that. Like when standing in groups of people and you're trying to be in charge, right? I wondered sometimes if that affected my experience as much as my gender. So that derails your question a little bit. Obviously, like we've got the biology, like with the menstrual cycles or clothes not fitting, uniforms, I had to get them tailored, right? So an additional cost. Pregnancy comes up for some women. It didn't for me. I had my kid after I was out of the field. But yeah, I mean, there's many things that is gender specific.
How you answered that and your points, like those are spot on. And that's kind of, I don't want to give like a general viewpoint of, I mean, like you said, it's like very perspectively minded, because even like for me, what I think is a hardship is going to be different from my partner, who obviously she's also a woman, but like she has different viewpoints on it. So like for me, it's like I would say like, I feel like some firefighters don't take me serious. And then she has said like sometimes either patients or other first responders, like they kind of they talk down to her a little bit because like I mean, she's gorgeous. She's absolutely gorgeous. Makes me look a little bit better. But but like they talk down to her. And then I've noticed with her, it's very much a thing where like, oh, let me carry that for you, or oh, I'll push the stretcher for you. And she's like, I can do this myself. So but
yeah, it's a very real thing. Everything you're talking about, like with patients, I think they definitely see our gender. Like that's I know that. And like you, I had a female partner for about a year. And we certainly got the comments like, oh, like they didn't send the men, like, can y'all carry me? Right. So there was that conversation that we had to have with patients. And then there is the whole piece of like, you're talking about like angry patients or people that are confused and belligerent and like just saucy, right? I think being a woman can actually help sometimes in those scenarios, because let's say the patient is male. Sometimes when another male is there, there's like this whole anthropological thing that happens where there's like this posturing. Whereas if two women enter, I think the patient, possibly some of them, are able to not have to do that whole dance of anthropology of like alpha male stuff. And we're able to de-escalate patients perhaps a little quicker. Right. I think that's sometimes a benefit, that we're not doing that dance that I think we know happens. I don't want to like just say all men do this posturing, but it is like a kind of a known, or I've talked to many men that have told me about this.
yeah. And that's kind of one of the things I was going to bring up. It's like, it's a 50-50 of, I've seen some patients that like, when the light switch goes off and they just like, suddenly there's nobody home except anger and rage. But like, I feel like sometimes it's this view of like, oh, well, I can take them, like with me and my partner, like I can take them down, no big deal, because, I'm a man. Or even some ladies, whoa. But also like, it can also be a pro, because kind of like you just hit on, like, I don't want to say it's a softer approach, but like for me, I take that to my advantage, and I'm like, hey, like more of like a, not that men can't do this, but like a nurturing aspect. That's just what I go to.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've
And I
also
think
had,
I think women who think they need to replicate the male model, and like I think sometimes women are explicitly told this. I mean, I was told this, that to be a leader, you need to do things like, you know, have this like command presence, and like basically it's just a replica of male leadership. Whereas I don't think we need to emulate that. I think women can have their own style that is not an attempt to just repeat that, but just like have their own style. I was told things like, you know, if you want to like get into business, like learn how to play golf, right? Like just like all this advice about, and it's just like basically telling me do the man stuff, learn how to drink bourbon, like right, do the stuff. Um, some of those things I do enjoy bourbon, but it has nothing to do with trying to fit in. Um, but I work to be a leader with my own style, and actually is through with kind of leading with love and not aggression, dominance thing.
absolutely, 100%.
These are things I think a lot about because I mentor women who are just getting into EMS. They may be my age, but the students, some are in their 20s, 30s, 40s. And they asked me these questions like, when I get on scene, like, how do I get people to take me seriously? You know, like, and I think that human qualities are not gendered, right? So, like, my ability to like have good eye contact with someone or like speak with a command voice and not a lot of fillers and not being giggly, these are not like gendered things. There's I think there's, and this is kind of my sociology background, I think there's as much variability within a gender as there are between genders. And you can dream up right now in your mind men who are quiet, soft, gentle, all these things that we label as feminine. um, so I think there's as much variability, and it's really more of what characteristics, what qualities are we looking for paramedics to have? You referenced having a backbone, and I think that is 100% true. I- I'd love to hear from you. Like, what does having a backbone mean to you? I think I know what you meant, but what do you mean by that?
Um, I know for me from the get-go of joining this field, it was having the ability to stand up for yourself. So,
Mhm.
like taking criticism, especially when you first start out in this field and then you go through your schooling. For me, it really hit home in paramedic school. And then since I've gotten my glitter gold patch, uh, but like anytime there's criticism on what you do or what you don't do and why, having the ability to stand up for yourself and be like, I did it because XYZ.
Mhm.
Or when patients call you not nice names, or
Mhm.
even like other first responders like try to walk over you or take that scene from you, having the ability to have that confidence and
Mhm.
have that unction within yourself of like, no, I've got this.
Yeah.
I can do this myself.
Right.
Like like you said, like you can't not be soft. You can't not have that gentle perspective about yourself. For me, like I still talk sweet to my patients. I'm not gruff and hard, and
Mhm.
I walk in and automatically I'm like, why did you call 911? Like you ease into that kind of stuff. So it's having that, but also when things start getting rocky or things start getting
Mm.
out of hand, like having that ability to center everything back, not
Mhm.
because, I'm rough and tough or whatever, but because like you have that innate characteristic that either you develop like I had to, or you just have
Mhm.
that natural talent. Um,
Yeah, and
even
that you're talking about like confidence and security, and you trust your own decision making and you trust your plan. And this is confidence. And I certainly know plenty of male students who've come through our program that had to develop that quality as much as women have, right? It's a EMS is kind of a great equalizer because it's so freaking hard. Like no one is like just gifted and talented at being a leader of chaos, right? Those are characteristics to build and learn and to like develop that confidence in yourself and trusting yourself.
And kind of like you're saying on that point, there are, like I said, like that ability to take command of the scene, that kind of thing. I had to learn how to do that in paramedic school because
Mhm.
I'd fallen into that I'm just the EMT mindset, and
Mhm.
things change when you get to paramedic school. Like my first scenario in paramedic school, I literally went through and I was like, PSI, is my scene safe? I'm going to call for ALS backup. And my instructor like put down her papers. She looked at me and she said, Alexis, you are going to be the ALS backup. And I started sweating. I was like, oh God, what have I done?
Yep.
So I
Yep.
had to like adapt that. But like we brought up earlier, even the physical aspect, like you ain't got to be jacked. You even like not just women, but like men too. Like you ain't got to be jacked. You just have to be able to take care of your patients and
Mhm.
um, not to be rude, but especially in the South, ain't nobody getting smaller because we got really good food down here. Like
Mhm.
you're not. When I moved to Utah last year, I was kind of taken aback because I'm like, everybody's so lean and fit. But then I would also remember like salt was a special seasoning. Um, so like I moved back home and I'm like here in Louisiana and I'm like, oh man, woo, diabetes and high blood pressure all over again. But
Mhm.
I don't know, like, but you can build that. Like whenever I was about to get hired at the first agency I worked at, I learned about the fit test of getting hired, of you have to, no offense, I had my height, I'm 5'7.5". I had that to my advantage of like
Mhm.
lifting the stretcher.
Mhm.
um but even before that, like I literally started working out like twice a day because
Mhm.
I went from being an English teacher and like a high school English teacher to
Huh.
now I'm going to be picking Papa off the floor who
Yep.
didn't go on a diet for me to come and do this. So
Mhm.
you can build
Yeah, you
that kind
think
of
about
stuff.
the muscles that you need, or it's legs and core, it's back. It's not as much arms. So that's women's wheelhouse. We got the thighs.
Absolutely. I've even taken it as far. My mom's not happy about it, but I got a little laser gun, like a tiny little tattoo of a laser gun. Because patients, like, they look at me and they look at my partner who's smaller than me, and they're like, "Oh, can you ladies pick me up? Are you gonna drop me on the
Hmm.
stretcher?" And I
Yep.
hit him with the, "Oh, mama, you didn't know you signed up for the gun show." And then I even take it a step further. I'm like, "Oh, safety's off. Better watch out."
Uh,
So yeah, we talked about too, like you brought up the fit of the uniform because like it
mm,
is this unisex fit, but like, I mean, for me, not trying to, sound some kind of way, but like my hips are a little bit bigger than my waist. And so it's kind of
mhm,
like if I don't want to just like cinch my belt the whole way because then I've got those weird folds in it.
mhm.
And then now it's I guess more widely accepted, but like they have like the women's fit of shirts versus the men's fit of shirts. So
Right.
I don't look like a mushroom person.
Right. Yeah.
And then like you said, like biologically, like
Hmm.
being completely open, like we have menstrual periods, we have cramps, and it's not
Right.
like, I can't come in today because I have cramps. Like, okay, then you won't get paid.
Mm.
Or, I mean, hopefully your agency has your maternal period, but like if you get pregnant, like there's going to be a point where you're not going to be able to live. You're not going to be able to do this
Okay.
job.
So let's talk about that. Because I've had students, and I think would be important for listeners to hear. I've had students come to me crying when they found out they were pregnant. in paramedic school and thinking they just had to stop, right? They're like, okay, now I guess I'm taking a break. And that is not the case. That is not the case at all. They were able to continue through school, kept going to clinicals. I see nurses, we do rotations with our students in the ER. I see nurses that are very pregnant, doctors who are very pregnant, still doing the work. Now they're in hospital, so it's a little different than out of hospital, but I certainly have friends that have worked flight medicine or ground EMS that were able to work a very long time being pregnant. So that's a message I would love for listeners to hear is it's not like you have to just stop and only be pregnant, and that's all you're doing. You can keep doing your life.
Absolutely. And if your agency is at a point where it's like, oh, you're, because I've heard of an agency that does this, oh, you're 20 weeks pregnant, you got to get off the truck because you're endangering yourself and your partner and the patient. And I saw one provider who I told her, I was like, sis, you look like you're about to bust. But she was joking about it because she's like, what's the worst that can happen? I have my baby on shift.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to be your partner in that aspect because, like, I don't want to deliver your baby. No pressure.
I think that's concerning that I don't know if they were recommending them get off the truck or requiring them to, but I would ask more questions about that because at 20 weeks, you're good.
Yeah.
That's
100%.
interesting. Yeah. There are, if we're thinking about like there's as much variability within genders as there is between. I mean, we could certainly like think of men in EMS who are also like incapable of like the stooping or the bending or that would be similar to somebody who's pregnant, right? So I'm not sure in what way a pregnant woman is endangering their patients or their partners. I'm not sure about that.
I'm not calling an agency out, but it was very much this. Yeah. It was very much like what you talking about, Willis? Like that's sketch.
That's not right. Yeah.
So, with all of this in mind, kind of like you've already hit on a good amount of points of it, but like if you could change these stigmas, like is there anything in particular you'd want to, harp on or things to actively like tell your students more specifically, more pointedly, like what are the things that you gear towards?
I think I mean, I have some additional comments related to the topic. One that has come up, not so much for me because I have probably culturally acquiesced and smiled when people want me to smile, but there's this concept of resting bitch face, RBF, and really that's actually just it's just a neutral face. It's just neutral. It's not even scowling. It is it's the kind of assumption that women will that you're required to smile or that you're owed, like if you're looking at a woman you're somehow owed a smile. I think I smile. I think it does like lubricate things socially, but I know for sure there are women in the field that are being told to like smile, and I think that's not right. I think unless we're doing it with all people, all humans, encouraging women to not do that to other women, maybe like smile and be happy. I think there's this overemphasis on being happy when it's like as if happiness is the goal. That's not my personal goal. My goal is tranquility and kind of being calm. And so I find that kind of exhausting. I've had patients tell me to smile, even though I like smiled upon entry and like did all the things. It's like they still want me to keep smiling during their medical emergency. It's like, well, I'm thinking hard right now, so I'm not focusing on smiling.
I'm glad you said that. I actually had her on the podcast previously. I know a paramedic who everyone kind of calls her like more hardcore just because like she's good at her job and she doesn't
Mhm.
take nonsense from anybody, and it's
Mhm.
commendable. But she had um somebody in a command higher than her um tell her that he said that she had complaints called on her because she
Mhm.
was mean to the firefighters on scene.
Mhm.
And she's
This
like,
comes up. I hear these stories also.
and
This
she
is a
was
very
like,
real thing.
what do you mean I was mean to him? Like, I thanked them every time. And he said, well, maybe just smile more at him.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was appalled because I was like, what are you supposed to do? Like, boost their ego and tell them they're
Mhm.
doing so great and you're so proud of them? Like, I'm nice to my fire boys and my fire women, and I appreciate them. Like, they do a lot for us.
Mhm.
But gosh golly, I'm sorry, but you're not going to tell me to, just it's pretty much like catcalling. Like, hey, girl, you need to smile. Like,
Mhm.
no,
It
that's not
can
how
be,
this is
yeah.
going to work.
It's like this very small little needle that women have to thread to not be they want to be taken seriously, so they can't be too giggly, smiley, but then they also want to please people, so they have to smile just enough, and it's like, think of the bandwidth that we're using up by thinking about all of that when we really just wanna be doing the work and thinking hard.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you brought that up because
Yeah, RBF, it's like, I hear people saying that. Women also about other women. I'm like, "Are they is it or is it just that their face is neutral and calm and not, like, trying to please everyone around them? They're just being."
I've had that moment where I think I just like slammed down two different extensive reports, and we were at the station. I'm not doing anything, and I'm just like staring straight ahead. I'm not, I'm just neutral face. And the supervisor came by and he's like, "What's wrong with you today?" And I was like, I'm a little tired. What you talking about, coach?" He's like, "Man, you got bad RBF today." And I was like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, be happy
Mhm.
that I've gotten like we're on a 24 and I've gotten like 2 hours of sleep this whole thing, and we're getting off in like 5 hours. Like, what you talking about, coach? Like, I'm
Mhm.
not the one today. Like, I yeah. And even out of this field, like you said, you hear about RBF all the time, and it's not so much that I'm trying to be that kind of way. It's more of like I just I'm neutral. Like
Neutral.
this
Yeah.
is my face. Like, what do you
Yeah.
want from me?
It's kind of an interesting experiment. The next time you're on a call, look around and look at the other faces of the other providers, perhaps firefighters who are there, or when you go in the ER, their faces, and notice like how do they look? Majority of the time, it's not super smiley, right?
No, no.
It's not. There are times, right, when we need to be pleasant and smiley, um, or we just generally feel joyful and we smile. But um, I think if you look around, you will notice that most men are allowed to have a neutral face without criticism. In fact, maybe they're even kind of encouraged to.
It's like one of my patients told me, I had asked him, I was like, "What's the secret sauce to a good marriage? You've been married for 60 something years." He's like, "Oh, well, uh, always make her happy," something like that. I'm like, "Okay." I was like, "I'm gonna take that into effect so I can find me a good man one day." And he said, and granted, like, I had my hair down, it was curled a little bit. I'd really given an extra effort that day. He said, "Well, maybe just try being more feminine." And I looked at him and said, "What do you want me to do?" I was like, "You want me to like put flowers in my hair in this job?" Like,
Oh, bless.
anyways, I'll never forget that because I was like, what do what do you want? What do I do? Wear pink shirts? Like, anyways, so with all of that, what advice would you give to another woman and such a man getting into EMS with all of this in mind?
So again, because you sent me this question in advance, I had time to think about it. So my like advice I would have had like this knee jerk. I'm sure I would have spewed something out. But like I do, I overthought about it, and I've decided that I can't give any useful advice because everybody's at such little different spots in their career and they're making the right choices they need for their specific. I know I need to come up with an answer, and I could say something trite, right? But I think advice is often like, it's tricky because we don't actually have to deal with the consequences of the advice we're giving someone else. Whatever decisions people are making is right for them when they factor in everything they know about their life. So we could ask, what advice would I give myself when I first started? Let me ask myself that question. Hang on a second. I was working so hard to being a really good 911 field paramedic. And now that I've realized there are these other branches like teaching or leadership or whatever, I think if I could go back, I would have tried to develop like a lot of skill sets, like how to do presentation design or how to work a spreadsheet or how to work a budget, right? Like I think I would have tuned into other parts of the whole industry and not just the clinical stuff. I mean, I think but see, that's the thing. I can give myself that advice, but really that first year, you got to dig into the clinical stuff. So I'm not sure. How about you?
Oof. If I could go back to baby Alexis in the cusp of EMT school,
Mm,
oh, I think I would tell myself, you're not going to know all the things
mm,
in the middle of school and even after school.
that's
Because
a good one.
even I'm creeping up on year 2 of being a paramedic this January, which blows my mind because I still don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm,
I do, but also, um,
mm-hmm,
I still, with all of this stuff, with all this knowledge, and I just hit 3 years total in EMS. I'm still learning things. I'm still learning how to do some things easier and med math. Whoa, still not my friend. We get there, but yeah, just it was always, it felt like this pressure to go out in the field because you're doing your ride times with these experienced providers, and you're finding all these people in the field that like they've been in this for a minute versus like you're not even at day 1. And so
mm-hmm.
for me, I had this a huge amount of pressure on myself of like, well, I'm not going to be good enough because I don't know all this stuff. Like, no, baby, like, no, give yourself some grace.
The 22 at the Lips podcast is designed to support, not replace, the relationship that exists between a practitioner and his or her medical director. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host, guest, and not necessarily of Master Medics. The information provided during this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for your approved protocols.